look at these outcomes in terms of seeing how we position our continent with regard to the kind of challenges that we are facing, the kind of issues that we are having, including the debt burden issue, or the trade inequality issue. To have this discussion, we have invited some resource persons to help us reflect on this. So I will be inviting those of these resources who are here. Let me invite Honorable Galvanis. Honorable, let us welcome this MP from Central African Republic. Welcome, Honorable.
Thank you.
How are you?
I am well, thank you.
And now we are in Ghana, we are in Accra. We have someone from Accra. Actually, he's the one hosting us. May I invite Mr. Nana to come up. You are going to discover why we brought this man here. You are going to discover it. Sit right here, sir.
Thank you.
I want you to be far from Honorable because I don't want to fight. And then, let me invite Jane, the referee. Jane, you will help us avoid this fight. So come and sit right in the middle here. If the man from Ghana wants to fight the man from Central African Republic, you just stop him. Who else am I going to invite? By show of hand? No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to invite some of us who are not here physically, but who will join us online. I hope they are listening to us. I don't know if they are. Any of you online, please, if you are listening to us, just show your hand and say something. That's the show of hand that you are talking about. Is there anyone online? Is Father JP with us? Or is Mr. Steen Polo with us? You see, sometimes we got failed by technology. But I'm sure when they connect, they will join. I don't know if our brother from Nairobi, Vitalis Major, is online. Vitalis, are you online? It looks like he is not. We are going to start our session, and I wish to thank you all for having decided to come to this session. And I would like to acknowledge the presence of some people here whom I know. Welcome, Stefano. How are you, sir?
Very well, Martin. Thanks. Thanks for organizing this.
Thank you. And then see how I welcome my sister from Nairobi. How are you, madam?
I'm doing great.
Good. Professor, welcome.
Thank you, thank you.
I'm doing this for you to see who we have in the hall. I was welcoming Stefano, who is coordinating the global mechanism on financing for development. His purpose of being here is to make sure that we do all understand what we mean when we discuss things that relate to financing for development. And I will plead with you to give me 2 or 3 minutes to set the scene for what we are going to discuss by giving you some clues on the history of financing for development. We've now gotten 4 international conferences on financing for development. I mean UN conferences. Since Monterrey in 2002, where we got the first one. Then the second one we got in Doha, 2008. The third one in Addis Ababa, on our own continent, 2015. And then the last one that we got in Spain just a few months ago, a couple of months ago. Why are we bringing this history? We are bringing this history because the pillars that were discussed in Monterrey in terms of making sure that we do have resources to finance development using a number of pillars, including 2 main ones: domestic resource mobilization and international financing for development. And around these two, you had other pillars, including trade in support of development, systemic issues, and innovative financing. We got out of Monterrey with a number of pillars that we considered were important for mobilizing financing for development. Then 8 years later, around 8 years later, when we did the evaluation in Addis Ababa, we realized we were not on a desirable path. Then we renegotiated what we wanted to get for the post-2015 development agenda. Almost 10 years later, I almost skipped Doha. After Monterrey, we went to Doha in 2008, where we were deep in the global financial crisis, and we tried to find solutions for that before we got to Addis Ababa, where we thought new actors were to be brought up into the system of financing development, with the private sector being given an important space in terms of mobilizing billions to allow the private sector to bring trillions. Is that, Stefano? Billions for trillions. That too didn't seem to be the solution until we got to Seville, where we started discussing the restructuring or the reform of the international financial architecture. You see, I'm telling this history, this story, in a way that should let you understand that the path of financing for development has not been a success globally because we keep thinking of how we redo things. That's globally. Now, as Africa is concerned, what have we got? It's even worse because what we got out of this process is nowhere in favor of what we expect. The kind of multilateralism that we are having today seems to be detrimental to Africa. Because when you look at Africa and the kind of issues that we are having, poverty is growing. The debt burden is becoming unbearable. We seem not to have solutions anywhere. Even the things that we develop ourselves, we are unable to implement. So we are like in trouble. What's happening to us? We try to negotiate with partners outside there for us to get a global system where we can get some kind of balance, but for no avail. So what do we do as Africans? Now I look at my panelists. I look at you because I put the story that way for us to see if we want to stake on what I just said, Jane. What kind of multilateralism do we have today when we look at trade, for instance? What's happening? Where's Africa? Jane is from SEATINI. She's going to tell you who she is in more detail.
Okay. Thank you so much, Martin. Jane Narunga. I work for an organization called SEATINI. I work on economic policy issues. Martin, you have asked me a question about where multilateralism is at the moment, but I wanted to go back because this session is about the financing for development. I just wanted to say something a little bit about that to add on what Martin has said, because the Financing for Development Conference is also part of multilateralism, because we call it FfD4. It's a high-level multilateral meeting bringing together governments, international organizations, businesses, private sector, to be able to discuss how developing countries can be able to finance their development. Basically, that, how can developing countries finance their development and achieve the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. And what's clear is that a number of developing countries won't achieve the SDGs, as planned. So that was an issue even in Seville, and even in the processes of FfD4. So the FfD4 was also about looking at that financing gap between what we want to achieve, the SDGs, and what is in place. So the objective also FfD4 was also to look at the financial architecture, how it can be aligned to the SDGs, but also to the debt and also the trade. FfD4, the entire process can be also looked at against the background, as Martin has pointed out, of the global challenges. We look at global tensions, geopolitical tensions, and I think that also colored what came out of the FfD4, because countries like the US walked out. They were not part of the FfD4, and that also colored the outcomes of FfD4. Because at the end of the day, FfD4 was a compromise, a consensus. And you know, when you reach a consensus, when there are different, you know, people at a different positions, you go for the lowest denominator for the purpose of at least coming up with a statement, with an agreement. And for me, I see FfD4 outcome document as a compromise, looking at the lowest, the very, very lowest denominator. So the compromise was there, and when you read it, it's more of, in negotiations, we have what we call binding commitments, that I shall do ABCD. That's binding, I shall do it. But when you say we encourage, we enhance, we support, you know, that's best endeavor. So when you look at the document, the final document which came out of FfD4, that's the language almost everywhere. We call upon, we stress, we enhance support, we support, you know. So we promote, and you wonder how are you going to do it? So the document, the outcome document from Seville, there's little to touch on, to hold on to. And for me, I think this exemplifies the multilateral system which we have, that it's weak and that it's really difficult to use multilateralism to be able to help us in the challenges we have. Because as Martin has pointed out, the challenges are still there in Africa, and we have been talking about them. The high indebtedness is still there. It's a crisis. We are facing a debt crisis in Africa, and it's still there. And I didn't see any position to alleviate that. Maybe the promise that we are going to have a debt convention under the UN, it might be promising, but the challenges, we still have them. So for me, when you say where do we stand when it comes to multilateralism, FfD4 is a good example that things are not good and that we might not run to multilateral systems to be able to solve our problems back home. I also see the World Trade Organization. It's the highest body regulating international trade. Again, it has also been weakened because if Trump can get up and impose tariffs on everybody, if it was a previous era, because you know it's like we have crossed into a new era. If it was in a previous era, already you go to the WTO dispute settlement mechanism. You know, there was a system. Today it isn't there. It says Lesotho 50%. It's like he's dishing out, you know, food. You know, India, you have done this. I have added on more. You have add on more. You know, so where is the WTO? We don't see that. So that's the state of multilateralism. And I think in such circumstances, it's up to us from developing countries to see alternatives. And for me, the alternative one is to be able to assess really what's going on. And there are so many other unilateral measures coming out of developed countries. I don't know whether you know about the EU deforestation regulations. For African countries or other developing countries exporting cocoa, coffee, palm oil, soy, beef, what else, to the EU, you need to show that you haven't deforested you didn't plant your products by cutting down trees. And for that directive, the deadline is December 2025. But countries are in a panic because it takes a lot to be able to map each farmer, because our production is by small-scale producers, you know. But this is a unilateral measure, you know. Europe said this is what we are going to do, and they are going to do it. Again, you don't hear, when you look at the FfD4 final document, they are saying, okay, we will enhance support to nothing concrete. So EU has gone ahead to impose those directives. So maybe I will stop here, but we need to look inwards. We need to look inwards as Africa. We need to strengthen ourselves, and maybe I can give examples on proposals on how we can be able to look inwards.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jane. Thank you. Give her a clap. Now, Jane just helped me continue to elaborate on the story I was telling. What comes out of what she says is that the language in Seville was still the language of promises. The language, not just the language of promises, but a language that gives way to non-fulfillment. Because when you encourage, when you promote, when you do all what the Seville outcome document says, you don't force anyone to do anything or to change anything. You don't give the tools to have a new setting for multilateralism. And she concluded by saying things are not good. You're right, Jane. Things are not good for Africa. Because for more than 60 years now, we've been hearing promises, and none of these promises has been kept. We heard about the 0.7% ODA, official development assistance. Rich countries were supposed to allocate 0.7% of their GNA to development. We've not seen it for more than 60 years. We went to Addis Ababa, and then when we wanted to discuss or to negotiate, they said, no, there's nothing to say. The only thing to say is, let us bring the private sector in, and then they will transform billions into trillions, and your issues will be solved. That's what came out of Addis Ababa. Now, 10 years after, nothing has been solved. We've seen no trillion. Did you see any, Stefano? No trillion. Maybe we saw billions going to private people, but we saw no trillion coming back to us for development. So that's how bad the situation is. Because we in Africa, we continue to be in poverty. We continue to have issues where the people expect change in their living conditions. When I say the people, Honorable, I come to you. is there any hope? Or will you start by telling us what the people in Africa expect? And if there's any hope for those who are called upon to design solutions to bring the solution. Or maybe the people have the solution.
Thank you very much. I am Galvanis Gassiombo. Do we have translations? Because I'm on an official mission, I would like to speak in French. If not, I can continue in English, but pardon me? Yeah, but I'm on an official mission and my people need to, yeah. My people have to hear what I'm saying. I'm representing the people. Right. Bonjour tout le monde. Je suis Jean Galvanis Gassiombo. Je suis un député élu, député national de la République centrafricaine. Je suis membre de la commission économie, finances et plans. De carrière, je suis économiste, mais je suis aussi de la technologie. Je suis dans l'entreprise, l'architecture d'entreprise. La question qui nous est posée ici, à mon avis, repose sur un paradigme qui est un peu dépassé. On nous demande qu'est-ce que c'est que le multilatéralisme et qu'est-ce que ça représente en tant que solution pour le développement des pays africains. Il y a deux choses qu'il faut tenir en compte. La première chose, c'est que l'architecture économique qui a été définie par les institutions de Bretton Woods, par les modèles économiques pendant des années, n'a pas marché pour l'Afrique. La deuxième chose, c'est que le développement de l'Afrique a toujours été pensé par rapport au point de vue de l'Occident. On nous a proposé des modèles économiques basés sur des variables, des visions européennes. Et en tant que représentant du peuple, ce peuple avec qui je partage leur expérience tous les jours, je suis là pour vous dire que ce paradigme de multilatéralisme n'a pas offert une solution. Pourquoi? Comme je l'ai dit tout à l'heure, c'est un processus exogène aux économies africaines. Nous devons donc, en tant que penseurs, parce que c'est ce que nous sommes des représentants du peuple, mais je vois ici des grands penseurs comme mes collègues à ma gauche, mais aussi dans l'audience, des gens qui réfléchissent sur le problème du développement. Quels sont les mécanismes que nous devons mettre en place pour que le processus de développement soit un processus endogène, c'est-à-dire généré par nous, pour satisfaire nos objectifs économiques bien déterminés? C'est la première chose. La solution que nous avons héritée du financement pour le développement 4 à Seville nous pointe de doigt une direction à suivre. Et l'un des éléments importants que j'ai retenu, c'est la mobilisation des ressources domestiques. Et je pense que c'est important parce que pendant longtemps, les pays africains ont été considérés comme des pays qui ont pour première responsabilité économique la production de biens, de matières premières. Nous sommes là pour produire du café, du cacao, à la limite permettre aux entreprises européennes de venir exploiter nos bois à l'état brut, exploiter nos minerais sans les transformer sur place, de sorte que les plus-values ne bénéficient pas à nos pays. Et avec le concept de mobilisation de ressources domestiques, deux choses entrent en jeu. La première, c'est au niveau national, qu'est-ce qu'il faut faire? Et au niveau régional, qu'est-ce qu'il faut faire? Je me suis permis d'identifier quelques-unes de ces choses. Au niveau national, nous sommes dans l'ère de la technologie. Nous devons développer des systèmes de digitalisation qui permettraient au gouvernement de récolter les revenus par rapport aux taxes. Ça, c'est l'une des premières choses que nous devons faire au niveau national. La modernisation des systèmes de gestion financiers pour nos agences, pour les institutions gouvernementales. Mais aussi l'élargissement de la base fiscale. Il y a beaucoup de méthodes de production primaires chez nous qui ne sont pas taxables ou qui ne sont pas taxées. Qu'est-ce que nous devons faire à ce niveau pour permettre à l'État de récolter les revenus que les producteurs leur doivent afin de les disséminer à la population? Et au niveau national aussi, j'ai parlé de technologie tout à l'heure, mais nous sommes dans un monde qui change. Je prendrai l'exemple de mon pays, la République centrafricaine, où nous sommes l'un des premiers pays en Afrique à commencer à penser au concept de crypto-monnaie, au concept de tokenisation des ressources naturelles, mais aussi à l'utilisation de la technologie de blockchain pour permettre le transfert financier. Alors, toute cette technologie, tous ces processus, l'élargissement des bases de taxes permettraient aux pays africains d'augmenter leurs ressources domestiques. Et là, c'est le premier volet au niveau national. Mais, comme vous le savez tous, l'Afrique, tous les pays africains, en termes économiques, sont des petits pays. Et je dis ça pourquoi? Parce que nous n'avons pas l'économie du marché. Vous prenez un pays comme le mien qui a 627 000 km², mais la population n'est que de 6 millions. Ce pays ne peut jamais se développer. On ne peut pas avoir l'économie d'échelle. Vous prenez un pays comme le Cameroun, qui a peut-être 28 millions, mais qui produit d'une manière industrielle les mêmes produits que mon pays, la République centrafricaine, produit. Donc, les pays africains ont lancé entre eux-mêmes une compétition qui frôle même ce qu'on peut appeler en d'autres termes le cannibalisme. Ça, c'est un cannibalisme économique. On produit du matériel dans un pays qui est détruit par des matériels produits dans d'autres pays. Et donc, vous voyez, nous sommes... c'est comme un chien qui chasse sa queue, on ne va pas avancer. Et donc, pour que l'Afrique bénéficie vraiment de la mobilisation des ressources domestiques, il faut qu'on commence à rendre réelles les promesses de l'intégration régionale. Et l'intégration régionale ne commence pas par seulement une intégration politique, mais une intégration économique, où les pays identifient les projets fondamentaux communs, les projets d'infrastructure, les projets de construction de matériaux de base qui permettront de lancer les bases d'une économie viable et durable. Le troisième point maintenant, c'est le rôle que vous, membres de la société civile, le gouvernement et nous, les parlementaires, pouvons ensemble jouer pour que ces choses deviennent certaines réalités. Moi, je pense que c'est important, parce que je suis en train de vous parler en tant que parlementaire, c'est très important qu'il y ait une collaboration étroite entre les parlementaires, la société civile et le gouvernement. Les parlementaires, c'est un peu les traits d'union entre la population et le gouvernement. Alors, nous venons vers vous, nous, du Parlement, pour demander votre assistance. Parce que les sociétés civiles font des recherches, les sociétés civiles ont l'expérience qu'il faut, venant de l'Europe, venant dans d'autres pays. Vous pouvez facilement, comme le fait TGNA, que j'apprécie énormément, je vous ai dit que je suis vice-président de l'APNIFT, qui est un flagship programme de TGNA. Et c'est grâce à TGNA que je suis ici, que je fais certains des travaux que je réalise. Et sans la participation directe de la société civile, la plupart de nos parlementaires seront coincés par les contraintes financières qui leur sont imposées par le gouvernement. Et donc, the road ahead, comme on le dit en anglais, consiste à créer une synergie entre le gouvernement par rapport à ses programmes de développement, la population par rapport à ses aspirations et les organisations comme vous qui avez l'expérience, vous avez le know-how pour nous permettre de créer l'environnement qu'il nous faut parce que le multilatéralisme a failli. Je vous remercie pour le moment.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable. You see, my story is taking flesh. Honorable Galvanis just added to my story to say what the African people expect. They expect a new form of economy whereby our natural resources are processed to have more value. They expect economic stakeholders to be able to work together. And they expect a governing system whereby you could see the civil society, parliamentarians, and governments working together. But how do you do this? What kind of institutions do you have in place to do this? And he said that, referring to the failing multilateralism, which means that beyond the global collaboration, we do have a solution somewhere at our feet in Africa. Meaning that when we look around, when we look at national level, the institutions that we have in place, the instruments that we have in place, we need to make them effective enough to solve our issues. This goes for the regional level. I'm slowly jumping up toward the African Union. We were supposed to have someone from the African Union with us to enlighten us on what kind of instrument we do have in place to solve the kind of issues that we are having. Considering that the multilateralism, we are not getting solutions from the global level, and these are the people telling us we do have solutions here at our feet. We do have solutions at the continental level. Our friend from the African Union was supposed to tell us what these instruments are before we would have then gone to Nana to look at one specific instrument. So, but before I went to Nana, I'm going to add something on my story, the story of the African Continental Free Trade Area, which looks like a solution, right, Prof? It sounds like a solution. Because when we look at the kind of issues that we are having in Africa, and Jane was referring to that, trade issues. If we have an African continental free trade area that works, it means that we have the solution. But how do we make it work? We've been hearing about this for years. Just like we've been hearing about the African financial institutions for years. We've been hearing about many instruments for years, but yet none of these are operational. So, Nana, what's happening? Tell us what's happening, and then you will tell us what that instrument that you know about, which you tried to sell to the African Union, and which is pending operation, I mean an African apex body to help generate that agribusiness industry that we lack in Africa, despite the fact that we do have all what is necessary. What's happening?
Thank you very much, Martin. I don't even know where to start with. We're talking about Africa unilateral, Africa multilateral. Which ones do we want? We are different, independent, individual countries. The things we do sometimes are different from one country to the other. Who remembers AGOA? What is AGOA? Africa Growth Opportunity Act. That was signed between Africa and the United States some years back. What happened to it? Here comes America, Donald Trump, and says, I'm imposing tariffs. Has any African country or any third world country get up and say, wait a minute, sir, we have an agreement under AGOA. You can't just do that. This conversation we have around here, do we hear that conversation between the Arab countries? Because they're rich. They couldn't be bothered. I spent a lot of time in Saudi Arabia, in Kuwait, and stuff. They couldn't be bothered. You do what you do, they do what they do. But in Africa, capital mobilization is very difficult because we are poor people and we don't know how to mobilize or aggregate capital. What is the biggest tool to mobilize capital? Insurance, taxes, pensions. Do we have them? Most African countries don't have those tools. So how do you mobilize resources? The taxes, the business person doesn't want to pay because it's one shoe fits all that our governments impose. 25% for every private sector business to pay taxes at the end of the year. But in other jurisdictions, you only pay a percentage based upon your income. So capital mobilization tools are non-existent in Africa because our governments don't know how to structure that. The second point that I'm making, our parliament, and we said the parliament is being fed and supported by civil society. Who provides resources? The civil society. The foreign countries, the Western world. They provide the resources for them. If you ask my colleagues sitting there, I'm chairman of the civil society in Ghana. I know where the bacon is coming from. And then we go bid them what they want. We said EU says deforestation. If you do, you increase your cocoa acreage and all, they're not going to allow you to. Because deforestation affects climate change. And the climate change impacts on them as well. So said, don't do deforestation. Let's do something else. So the African countries, we are our own West enemies. Martin, we go to Malabo Declaration. Do you remember that? That's CADEP, beginning. Comprehensive African Agricultural Development Plan was formulated, and unfortunately, I had one of the signatories with me this morning in Accra here. I didn't know we were going to talk about this. I would have brought him. When we signed the Malabo Declaration, the 7 pointers, Africa decided we were going to assign 10% of our annual budget to agriculture and 7% growth per year. Has any African country done that? since Malabo Declaration, which is the precursor of the continental free trade. That gentleman and I sat in Malabo and started the continental free trade. Are we trading among ourselves? No. If I set up a bilateral between Kenya and Ghana and say Kenya's strongest points, we import from them. Ghana's strongest point, they import from us. No. The American ambassador will troop into the Kenyan president's office and say, Mr. President, what are you doing? You cutting us off? Says, oh, no, no. Well, we take you to the United States. And that's the end of the bilateral between Ghana and Kenya, between different countries, bilateral arrangement. We don't do the right things for us. And we want somebody else to handhold us and provide the bacon or the leverage to do what we need to do. As I said, pension schemes is capital mobilization. If you are 25, you put 10% of your resources in a pension scheme. By the age of 60, you have a whole lot of resources. But we don't have those schemes here because nobody wants to pay. Taxes, forget about it. We don't. So what do we expect to get money to prosecute our development? That's how our politicians go out to the World Bank, go out to International Monetary Fund, and borrow. When they borrowed and you keep track of the borrowings, at the end of the year, it's dissipated, untracked. You can find it. Just last week, if you were in Ghana, I think, Martin, that's when you were coming. A country next door to Ghana imported about 25, what do you call them, Jeeps and Ford F-150, 25, scattered all the way from Accra down this country. You kidding me? Why do you do that? Do we need them all at once? And that is their capital reserves being spent to import those vehicles. So we African leaders are not doing what we're supposed to do. The Parliament of Africa, forget about that. They don't do much. As a civil society prescribes, they write and they follow, because without civil society, they don't do much. And as I said, I'm the chairman of civil society in Ghana. So the civil society funding is coming from the Western world. So they prescribe what we're going to do, what we don't do. And for us to do what we need to do, and you and I know, Africa says we're going to trade among ourselves. Do we? No. We don't trade among ourselves. And we don't add keyword value to our raw materials. Ghana chocolate, Ghana cocoa can do chocolate, and we do manufacture chocolate in Ghana. But give the Ghana chocolate to the young girl or young kid at school, I prefer Cadbury. Where's Cadbury coming from? London. So we don't even want our local value addition. And the raw materials that we have, that we want to export, the gold. Let me give an example that I gave this morning in that presentation. Ghana has tons of gold, so is South Africa. We have a relationship of gold that had gone for a long time. When Ghana was doing gold, Anglo gold, we were exporting gold that's one is dug from the ground into a plane and export to South Africa to wash it, clean it, and they come back and say, oh, we only found 1 ounce of gold in the dust. How do we know? Because it wasn't accompanied by security. And the pilot of the plane was my brother-in-law. So I know what I'm talking about. And today, up to today, the gold reserves that were sent, the gold dust that were sent, had silver, had other minerals. Did we account for it up to even today? No. So why do we going to blame somebody that they don't allow us to do, they don't do this for us or what? We don't do it ourselves. If we want to do it ourselves, let's cultivate the young people to put pension schemes together. Let's cultivate the young people to do business the proper way and pay taxes. Government don't grow horns or money out of the blue, but we fail to do. And what we blame somebody else, the blame game, and then we sit and fold our hands. If we stop talking and do the right things, the capital mobilization, the pension schemes, the aggregation of the banking system, they borrow, the Africans don't pay. In the United States, non-performing loan portfolio, 1%, the bank management will be called to the banking department and someone that if it doesn't go down within the 3 months, you are fired. But in Ghana, non-performing loan portfolio of 10.5, nobody shakes their head. Nothing's wrong because they didn't pay. So, Martin, you and I know, I have Pan-African Agribusiness Chamber that was established by the African Union, signed at Malabo Declaration. We metamorphosed into a system. Has it been supported with 1 cent? No. So it's sitting in the books. You are a board member of that. Have we mobilized anything? No, sir. How do we get it done? How do we get the small potatoes, the small farmer, to be able to do what they need to do? Because everybody rides a Mercedes. Everybody rides a Land Cruiser. That is the borrower. But the lender rides a bicycle and a Fiat. We continue, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nana. You see, my story is getting flesh. And I'm coming to you now very soon. I mean, to the floor. For you to put more flesh. What you hear from Nana is that we Africans are our own enemies. We are not doing the right thing to solve our issues. When we started with Jane, we saw that the global system is not helping us because things are not good. Then, Honorable told us there are solutions, but we are failing to implement these solutions. Nana came and pushed the nail deeper to say Africa is not doing the right thing for Africa. Now that Africa is not doing the right thing for Africa, maybe it's about time for us to strategize on what we should really be doing as Africans to solve our issues. How do we implement the solutions that exist? Because when I hear our panelists, I feel there are solutions. The African Union is here with solutions. Nana cited a few examples. But these solutions are not being implemented. How do we implement these solutions that exist? And how do we make things move in favor of ourselves? That's why I'm going to come to you on the floor to give you a take on what we heard. But before I come to you, let us check if our respondents are online so that we will give them a chance to say something before we continue the discussion. Is anyone online? Mr. Stinpolo, are you online, please? Is Madame Florence online? Nobody's online. There are two. There are two people online. Okay. Who is online? Just take the floor, take the line and say something. Let me check who is online. Can we see who is online so that we invite them specifically? Who do we have? Okay, while waiting for those who are online to come to us, I'm coming to the floor. So I want to get your take. Yes, that's number one. I want number two and number three and number four. Number one, number two behind her, number three. Where's number four? Where? Number four. Okay, so we start with number one.
Ok, merci. Et depuis que je suis là, hier, nous avons entendu des dénonciations, nous avons entendu des recommandations, mais j'avoue que c'est aujourd'hui, la session a vraiment commencé pour moi. Mais le seul problème est que les trois panélistes, et particulièrement le troisième, m'a tellement mis à plat. Parce que je vis vraiment nos réalités, qui nous sommes en Afrique. C'est vrai, je suis d'accord avec eux. Avant de jeter la pierre aux institutions financières, aux G20, et voilà, il faudrait que d'abord nous, Africains, nous fassions notre mea culpa. Sinon, l'année prochaine, nous serons encore là, au même niveau. Parce que quand j'écoute les trois panélistes, et je me rends compte que, bon, c'est comme si c'est du théâtre. Parce que depuis qu'on a commencé à parler de la nouvelle architecture financière internationale, nous avons d'abord entendu parler de ça au niveau du FMI, au niveau du groupe 20. Il y a eu même un sommet organisé par la France en 2023 pour parler de ça. Pourquoi nous, notre situation se discute chez eux? Est-ce que ce n'est pas par hasard parce qu'ils ont compris que de plus en plus de voix s'élèvent en Afrique pour dénoncer en fait cette inégalité dans le service de la dette, pour dénoncer toute cette en fait architecture néocoloniale qui nous bouffe? Peut-être qu'ils devraient se ligoter dans l'eau pour nous endormir. Donc, je suis d'accord avec ces panélistes. La solution, c'est en Afrique. Il faut que nous-mêmes, nous levons. Mais je suis encouragée aujourd'hui parce que on pourrait croire que nous parlons sans agir. Mais je pense que nous avons franchi déjà un cap parce qu'il y a de la conscientisation par rapport, en fait, au problème. Et je pense que nous, en tant que société civile, quand nous allons rentrer, nous allons mettre à profit les réseaux sociaux pour conscientiser surtout les jeunes. Parce que tout va venir des populations. Parce que même quand, je suis désolée s'il y a des parlementaires ici, nous voulons compter sur nos parlementaires, mais le plus souvent, c'est en fait le parti politique au pouvoir qui est majoritaire au niveau du Parlement. Donc, ils parlent le même langage que l'exécutif. Donc, ça complique les choses. Je pense que les populations feront la chose. Merci.
Yeah, my name is Pepukai Muchazondida Shinrai. I am from Zimbabwe. Very interesting discussion, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, I think we are in a crisis as Africa, and we are agreeing that there is a crisis. And the risk is we seem to have reached a ceiling in terms of coming up with alternatives. So that's the biggest challenge, ladies and gentlemen. The global financial architecture, it's really a ground where we have a player and a referee at the same time. And we really can't compete effectively in that kind of a field unless we reassess our entry strategy into that fighting, space as Africa. So I think our problem should start and ends with Africa, especially African Union, because that's our biggest political structure, which is letting us down. I would propose that in medium to long term, probably we need to disband the national level governance system, political system, and transition to an Africa for Africa focused political system. Because as long as we have those silos in terms of country level political systems, country level governance systems, will remain, weaker, because those are powerful country level institutions within Africa. And unfortunately, it is actually weakening the African Union as our alternatives. So we are still seeing a country level European individual country arrangements within African bloc. So it's still limiting, because what we are creating is, we have created another global north kind of, arrangement at an African level. So it becomes our risk or our challenge at the moment. So the we and them approach, I think it does not work, because that's what we have been doing for quite a long time. And I think we need to focus on we more than them. So looking internal, that's the option, but the how part becomes more critical, considering that we already have these challenges in terms of the how part. So African Union should be our alternative. We really need to interrogate more in terms of what are the milestones, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities that relates to Africa for Africans. Because as long as we are trying to look outside, the outside is not very friendly with us. It's friendly in quotes, because for them it's an opportunity. Africa is an opportunity. But how are we also taking other continents as opportunity for us? That's the challenge. Yeah, so I think Africa should have an all-country trading and investment plan that is Africa-led. I think we have had challenges in terms of that attempt, but probably we need to do more. We need to interrogate more. We need to share more as Africa for Africans. I think that's my proposition. Of course, it's difficult, but I think it can be done. Let's energize each other more from country level to regional level to Africa level. Thank you.
Good afternoon, or good evening. My name is Micho Miza. I'm from Zambia. So just to say thank you very much for the submissions, but you did ask a question, what should we do? I think all Africans know what we need to do, but no one is willing to do it. The first thing that we need to do, I think, in my opinion, we need our own institutions that will fund development in Africa. We can't continue looking outside for assistance from the IMF or the World Bank. It has been happening. If they meant work for us, would have been developed before some of us were even born. So these institutions are not here to help us, but I think our leaders are not ready for this conversation. And sometimes I ask myself, what do these regional bodies do? We have ECOWAS here, we have SADC, where I'm coming from, we have East African Community. They seem to be working in silos. I don't think there's cooperation between them. If it's there, it's on paper. I don't think it's been, yielding any results. But also, we need to start holding our leaders to account. Sometimes we get loans in the pretext that we are coming to develop the country. I'll give you an example in Zambia. The executive director of the railway system resigned in the previous government. And recently, because now we have a new government, he said, I resigned because the government at the time contracted debt to revamp the railway system. But politicians were withdrawing money without my consent. I don't even know where that money was going. So now we are paying that money, which didn't revamp the railway system, which meant to develop our country. So like my brother has said, and like yesterday I think Dr. Oromo said, we need to look for inside solutions. We can't look outside for African solutions when we know what we're going through. We recently had a French guy in Zambia, and he was paid a lot of millions of dollars to come and teach us how to restructure our debt, which we ended up defaulting anyway. So we need to look for inside solutions that will respond to our needs. And I think we have capacity. If you go to the World Bank, you'll probably find brilliant Africans working there. So why don't we create our own bank back home? We'll bring them here to work here. Thank you.
Number 4.
Thank you. My name is Peli Sankomo. I'm a feminist economist from South Africa. I chair the board of Oxfam. And thank you so much to the speakers for what you've shared. But I think what's becoming clear is that the governance hierarchy that Africa has been experiencing through the international financial architecture is both presenting opportunities that we're also missing. There's an opportunity for Africans to build their economies from the bottom. We're not going to be able to build resilient economies if national economies are weaker. One of the key things, for instance, we've been talking about as a feminist, particularly from BRICS, is that with the tariffs that have been imposed by Trump to several countries, South Africa, Lesotho, etc., actually we need to start activating, supporting infant industries and really build local economies, but also on the back of that, strengthen our manufacturing capabilities. Because then if you start to channel funding through your industrial development strategy to at the bottom, then amongst the key things is that at a national level, you're going to reduce imports. At a regional level, you're going to start trading with each other, but also at the continental level. You're going to have actually be able to support both your consumption and industrial needs. So one of the key things, of course, it's happening with leaders in Africa, that I don't like calling them leaders, public representatives, because they're not leaders. Public representatives. Amongst the key things is that they have absolutely no political and economic appetite to pursue this strategy. I think part of it, by the way, has to do with the fact that they have limited grasp of economics, that's one, but also two, they got taught economics by IMF and World Bank during corridors when they're being convinced on what the decision they are. And I think to counter that, we actually need to undertake a popular strategy on teaching, on public education, on macroeconomics. Macroeconomics must really become a norm. Financial literacy, economic literacy. I saw the book here outside, and it's English and French. I think we need to think about translating it in different languages, right? And really build in a groundswell, target young people, even young people, the Gen Z in Kenya who goes to the street. They need to, by the time in 2 years or 3 years, they reflect on what achievements have they made, but they must still understand the economics. Because amongst the key things that happens is communities mobilize, but they know very little. And to an extent that the mobilization only achieves few things and then it dies, because it's not sustained by good quality public education, which actually comes from us. I think the other issue is partner with politicians. There's an emerging young crop of young politicians in parliaments who are really keen to take things on, but also with a very strong left orientation from an ideological perspective, who are actually quite committed, as well as, of course, embed gender equality, feminist thinking within our own programs. I think young people now are starting to set up organizations, but these organizations, all of them about chasing wealth. We want to be wealthy. There's a business chamber for young people. There's a business chamber. But also when you look at the substance, they don't understand that the African economy is in crisis. You're not going to start a new business, a new business association when your GDP is growing at less than 1%. South Africa's GDP has been growing at less than 1% for the last 6 to 7 years. But we have young people who are starting chambers. And I think it's a strong signal that there's a limited grasp. So I really think that with those 3 proposals, we can actually move the needle. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We are going to continue the floor. That will be the first one. This is the first for the second round.
Okay.
Then I will choose with 3 others. It will not be. She will be number 2. She will be number 3. And he will be number 4.
Okay.
It has to be interactive, because don't say that I was not part of it. Yeah, because we need solutions. She said something very interesting. She said our leaders, she said our public representatives should become leaders. That's what I take from her. So number 1.
Okay.
That's you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I have a rhetorical question here. I don't want anybody to answer, just reflect on it. Do we really need foreign aid to survive as a continent? That is one. Now, the coming of Trump on the global stage has reshaped multilateralism. And from what we have heard since yesterday, multilateralism is on the way to die. And Africa needs to come up with a new strategy to finance development. Just recently, Trump called 4 West African countries, called them a meeting to Washington. And he told them openly that, look, there's nothing like aid again. We want trade. We want deals. And, Trump is able to do this because he knows that Africans, we are not united. There's no real integration, so to say. Because they know now that Africa has critical minerals. If you watch the policy of Trump, it's about deals, about tariff. And what is he looking for? He's looking for where to get critical minerals. He has done it in Ukraine, some other countries using coercion, power of coercion. So for Africa, with these critical minerals, it should be our negotiating power. And how do we do this if we don't have, trade internally with over 1 billion people as Africans? If we trade internally within ourselves, we should be able to have a strong negotiating power that somebody, people like Trump, who have sworn to impose tariffs, arbitrarily on countries, we can hold them to account. We can use it as a negotiating power so that these minerals that we have will not just go away like oil. There are crises all over Africa now, in Sudan, in DR Congo. In some parts of Nigeria, where we have those critical minerals, a lot of crises here and there, and they are getting these resources. So I think it's time for Africa to unite and integrate to be able to have a strong negotiating power to counter these foreign mercenaries.
Thank you. And I will follow up on Paul's question. And my question is, how can you make sure that the international community, especially the international companies, especially international companies within extractive sector, if they do business in your country, how can you make sure that they pay enough taxes to your government?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it is one of the previous UN Secretary General that said multilateralism can save us from hell, but cannot take us to heaven. Which means they can solve some, small problems, technocratic solutions, but they're not going to provide us with transformative approach that we need, And I think I want to, build on what Jen said, that we need to look from within, in terms of, Africa, in terms of countries in the global south. We cannot look to the system that is doing whatever that is doing to sustain the status quo to give us the solutions. Because it is by design, whatever that is done is to sustain the status quo. It's not to change, it's not to transform. And that has been said many times in these rooms where we are and before. So I think we need to really think, what do we need to do, to transform? That's where change will come from. And I think unity has been provided as a solution by so many people from day one to now. And for me, I think, yes, of course, African countries are not always united. They are not going to agree on everything. But is there a way that we can look at the bigger picture, at the bigger picture of our continent, the bigger picture of our people, that would actually take us beyond whatever differences that we might have. Because Africa is not poor. Like one panelist was saying, Africa is poor. We are not poor. That we have huge amount of resources. So the problem is not poverty. The problem is that, we are lacking the, I don't know what it really is. Because we have smart people, we have the resources in a different way, in various ways. We have the, we have human capacity. So I don't know what is lacking. Maybe someone else who wants to speak can build on that. Oh, I saw you putting up your hand.
You will be number one of the... No, you are number 4.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm Ibrahim Asal. I work for Trust Africa. I think it is... thank you to the panelists for the great contributions. In the write-up presenting this panel, there is mention of all the failed promises, all the disappointments of the previous, so there's a history of broken promises, okay? And now it's not only a history of broken promises. What we are seeing now is in some parts of the world a very clear sort of affirmation of the narrow interests of the countries themselves. That's what we are seeing coming from the US. The big power saying, look, there is no negotiation. It's not about solidarity. It's not about friendship. It's about nothing. It's about interest. It's become purely transactional, and that is that's what we are hearing now. So if they want to build, over many things, it's become very clear, upfront, direct now. So I think it is. For us now, almost like an existential issue on the African continent. I think we should just do what we are saying that we want to do. There are many good projects lying in, good initiatives being planned. We have Agenda 2063. I think African governments should just be much more deliberate, more determined in implementing their agenda, right? And also be united, at least in terms of common positions over the most important issues, and be negotiating together, right? And putting Africa's interests first. So if everybody is saying is this country first, let's say also Africa first. For us, it is our point of reference. It's our point of departure. That's what should guide the negotiations. That's what should guide the conversations that we are having with the rest of the world. You know, that's what everybody is doing. So I think Africa should just be much more determined in doing that. And also learn to connect different forces on the continent. Those who are leading us must learn to talk and work with their own societies, with their own civil societies, with their young people in particular, you know, and not be apprehensive of everything that moves everybody who asks questions. You know, I think there's a change of attitude to have within. While we look within, we should not be seeing enemies and adversaries and, you know, and plotters all around, but see people, see citizens, see people who are of our own, and presume that everybody wants the good of this continent, and everybody, you know, is interested in there being a change, and that people live better lives and have futures that are secured. So I think there's a mindset change that is required. There is a much stronger commitment to the strategic interests of the continent that I think is needed at every level. And the regional organizations like the African Union should engage the private sector, the civil society, the philanthropy community, and everybody in a much more serious way, you know, rather than preferring experts coming from elsewhere to advise them on things that we know better than them. Anyway, so I think for us it's really what we are witnessing now. We knew it would get there. That we knew that at the end of the day we are on our own. There are friends who genuinely want to help. There are, you know, but they are fewer and fewer. But they are there. There are those who want to help. But we have to get our act together, I think, for things to be able to work. Yeah, let me just leave it at that.
Thank you. Then we take the last person before, number one before the last, then you will be the last, and then we'll get back to the panel.
Thank you. It's not a question per se. I think it's just bringing together some of the really helpful questions and comments and observations that have already been made by people in the room, and to kind of think about to work with what we have on the continent. So obviously there's been a lot of reflections about the African Union and African development banks, but I don't think we necessarily have had the time or we have the capacity amongst ourselves to construct new African institutions. So I suppose the challenge is, how do we inform, how do we shape the existing institutions that we have to deliver the agenda that we're talking about? So if we think about reparations and debt, and the commitment by the AU to now extend the year of reparations to 10 years, some of the conversation we should be having here is about how does AfroDad, how does AFCOD, how do all of our organizations influence the AU to deliver that promise, to deliver this agenda for a decade? What is it that we need to do within the African Union? Who are the key officials? Who are the key ministers that we need to be lobbying to deliver on those promises? What are the working groups? What are the committees that us as civil society should be engaging with? So I'm just thinking in kind of strategic terms, how do we use what we have? How do we make it better? Rather than thinking about how the current institutions that we have, African institutions that we have, aren't working, how do we as civil society make them work, shape them, and influence them? Because I think we're a long way away. I mean, this conference has been incredibly invigorating and energizing, but I think we are a long way away from creating new institutions. So my challenge to myself, I suppose, and to maybe us in the room is, as I say, how do we use the institutions that we have and hold them to account? Thank you.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Puis-je utiliser le français? C'est Emeline Akizimana, je suis burundaise, je suis enseignante à l'université, je suis juriste de formation, spécialiste du droit international public, je suis également analyste des politiques publiques. Participer à ces sessions m'a réouvert ma réflexion sur la justice, sur la réparation, sur les dettes africaines, mais également sur le développement économique de l'Afrique. Mais je me suis posé différentes questions. Nous sommes ici, nous avons devant nous certains experts, nous avons les parlementaires, nous avons des gens de la société civile, mais nous continuons à dire que l'Afrique souffre. Oui, c'est vrai, l'Afrique souffre, nous souffrons, notre économie souffre. Au niveau sécurité aussi, il y a des pays qui sont toujours en guerre, mais j'aimerais savoir, chers panélistes, en tant qu'experts qui sont devant nous, quel est cet engagement que vous prenez actuellement? Qu'est-ce que vous engagez à faire après cette conférence? Et nous qui avons eu la chance d'être ici, j'aimerais savoir quels sont nos engagements, quels sont les engagements concrets que nous allons réaliser pour pouvoir faire face à tous ces défis que fait face l'Afrique. Merci. Bon, avant de terminer, j'aimerais proposer aussi si on pouvait faire un manifesto à présenter à différents gouvernements. Peut-être que ça pourrait aussi aider.
Thank you. What kind of commitment do we take from here? That's what she's asking. And she's asking you, Nana. She's asking you, Jane. She's asking you, Galvanes. What kind of commitment? But before the commitment, what do you feel after hearing what we heard from the floor?
Thank you very much. I think I can now switch to English since my opening statement was in French. I'm impressed. I think the audience paid attention to what we said. I also think they believe us. And I think, unfortunately, they drew a different conclusion. My conclusion is that there's hope for Africa. There's hope for our continent. One question that we were asked was, how do you make sure that mining companies pay the amount of tax that they owe to our economies? I think this has been done. Every African country who has mines have mining laws. Every African countries where foreign mining companies work have accountability toward the government. What is missing is a governance process to make sure that those mining companies follow the law, obey the laws, pay their taxes, and do not succumb to corruption. So you have two issues here. One is governance. The second one is corruption. How do we tackle those issues? That's my first answer, which is essentially a question. We can discuss that in long terms. The second point that I heard is it's more of a doubt in terms of the capacity for African countries, African youth, African people to build institutions, to build the kind of institution that they need. This is painful to hear. I don't think Africa lack the capacity to build the institution that we need. We need the willpower to do it. African people individually are very knowledgeable. If you go to the United States, if you go to the Caribbean, if you go to Europe, everywhere you go, most of the institutions there are run by by people of African descent. I'm not saying that because I want to contradict the sister who asked the question, but I don't want anyone leaving this room thinking that we as African people do not have the capacity to build the institution that we need. We do have that capacity. We just lack the will. That lack of will is exacerbated by the 2 points that I made earlier, corruptions and bad governance. Now, the subsequent question was, how do we make sure that those institutions that we do have now, who don't even function well, like the African Union, how can we leverage that capacity going forward? There's no hope for the African Union. The African Union is financed by the European Union. The regional economic associations that we have are financed by the European Union. The central banking systems that we have are financed by Europe. How do you expect them to have some level of autonomy to do what is right for Africa with the kind of thinking that we're having now? We don't want to be here, not as I want to quote Martin Luther King, we will be here 10 years from now, 20 years from now, singing "We Shall Overcome" and not getting anywhere. We don't want that. So, my friends, my sisters, my brothers, it is up to you, it's up to me, it's up to us to go back to our people and do whatever we can in whatever capacities we have to make the change, to talk to the youth, to influence the government through laws, through practices, through whatever we can, so that we can fight those 3 things I mentioned: corruption, bad governance, and hopelessness. I think I'll stop here for now. But there's one point I want to add. Yesterday, we talked about a new concept, because those people are always bringing new concept to us. First, it was independence. Now we're talking about bilateral cooperations. It didn't work. Now they're talking about multilateralism. We know it's not going to work. Maybe I should speak like that too. All right? And as if those concepts were not sufficient, yesterday we started talking about, let me use the term correctly, reparation. Now, we went from multilateralism to reparation. I want to make sure that when we live here, we don't live with hopeless dreams. Yesterday, there were 2 thoughts. One coming from Dr. Patrick, who believed that we should move forward without looking into the rearview mirror. That the way ahead is where we need to go. Things haven't changed. But I think he didn't have the time to bring his thought to the conclusion, because he only had 2 or 10 or 15 minutes to speak. The other gentleman who came back said, try to drive without a rear view mirror and you will see what happens. Of course you're going to crash. Someone's going to hit you from the behind. So I believe there is what I call an integrative way. We can do both. Drive forward and keep looking back. Why do we need to look back? We want to make sure that the European apologize, but not a weak apology. That apology should be translated in terms of economic support, economic transfer of technology, transfer of competency, transfer of knowledge, helping African people rebuild the mess they created. We also need to look forward, because as we look forward, it is us now in a driver's seat. It is our foot on the brake and on the accelerator. We have to decide ourselves how fast we go and where we're going. So those concepts, they're all nice concepts, they all sound nice. Multilateralism, reparations, independence. Let's not fall asleep. Let's wake up. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. Jane?
Thank you so much for the comments, for the questions. First of all, there is the issue of either all, we, them, either we go to the global level, to the multilateral level, or we stay internally. I think we need both. We are living in a global village, and we need to negotiate what we want. And I agree, Dina, what you said. We need our own solutions, because as Africa, we know what we want. But we need to go to the multilateral level to negotiate that. You know? So it's really, really important that we don't say we don't want multilateral level, we can do whatever we want. We need it, and we need to negotiate a multilateral system that supports what we do, what we want, and where we want to go. But we need also to be clear. What do we want to achieve? Where do we want to go? We talk about transformation, structural transformation. How does it look like? And what do we need to do? What kind of policies do we need to put in place? What kind of institutions we need to put in place? And if we are really clear about that, then, my brother, what you were saying about Malabo, 10%, that would even be more than 10%. It would even be 20%. You see, we would be implementing the Africa mining vision. We are not, the document is there. And it's because we are not clear what we want, our strategic direction, how to achieve it. And that's why, my sister, raised the issue of investment, ensuring that investors pay their taxes. We want much more from investors than paying taxes. We want to make sure they don't destroy our environment, that they provide decent jobs, that they respect our human rights. But when you look at our investment policy frameworks, all those things are not included, by the way. We provide incentives, they come in, they destroy the environment, sometimes they don't even provide decent jobs, and they take out their money, you know? So we need those policy frameworks and very strong policy frameworks in place. But for me, what's really important is for us to be able to know what we want as Africa and go out and negotiate that at the multilateral level. If we don't know what we want, you know, any direction is good enough, and the conditionalities will come in left, right, and center, and we start mourning and, you know, and crying, why are they doing that to us, you know? Yet each country is on its own. Each country is fighting for their own interest. And believe you me, there is no country which says they are going to help Africa. We are going to help you. Why? Why should they help us? You know? So we need to negotiate our way. We need to negotiate our interests. Thank you.
Anna?
Thank you. I think I've said most things that I want to say, in the sense that if we believe multilateralism is going to help us, that's not true. We are independent individual countries. We have jurisdictions and laws and regulations to do things within our country. If we fail to do that, we can't go to the UN and try to negotiate anything, try to decide on anything. You don't have money. You need money. It does take resources to become a global challenge. Within the African Union, African Union itself has not let us down. But the institutional processes within the African Union, only 5% of African countries pay our dues to the African Union. Only 5%. And if we don't do that, how do we expect the institution to function? So what I'm saying is, let's look at within our countries, our resources. As I said, tiered tax system, pension schemes. These are tools of mobilizing capital. Our deficiency is not knowledge. As the gentleman indicated, go to Harvard, go to all these institutions in the United States and London, Oxford and others. You have brilliant Africans. But the processes of utilizing those resources or mobilizing resources to do is where we failed ourselves. So if we're going to do that, then we will mobilize enough funding that will allow us to do what we need to do. The institutional framework are there. And I told Martin, he's on a board of an institution that I'm the CEO. And the board can't do much because we don't have resources. And as CEO, I can do nothing because I don't have the template to do. And that's the situation with Africa. We have resources that we're not turning into capital. Resources in that ground is nothing. We have gold that are not being converted into money. Money is what we need to use. So, to me, the long talk can stop for activity that can bring in the money, that can allow us to use the money to implement things, good schools, good health, good food, good institutions, and stop the bleeding of corruption. The gentleman indicated governance. I also happen to be in governance. Governance and corruption are two different wells. Because of absence of governance, corruption has taken precedence over everything. And the country's leadership are corrupt and destroying the system. And we sit there and we talk. Let's tell them, sir, you are a thief. Move away. You are a thief. We're not going to vote for you. The political system has destroyed Africa, where a majority wins power and they discard the people that didn't vote for them. They are also people of that nationality. So, ladies and gentlemen, to me, the long talk should stop. Let's turn our wealth into capital, spendable money, and then develop our systems and be able to within people. They will come to us. We wouldn't go to them. We wouldn't beg them to be part of the institutions. They will come to us. And definitely, that will make Africa the one that we want to do and the one that we want to be, the Africa we want, 2063. Let's not wait till then. The Africa we want should come to us. I don't want our young generation, my children, to come up and say, oh, we're being colonized by what? God. Ghana gained independence in 1957. And 2025, I'm talking about colonialism. Are you kidding me? No. So we have to do things, let the young people discard this colonialism, discard that they're stealing from us. It's our own people, our politicians that are taking it from us. Corruption, no governance, no accountability. And that's what we should stop. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now you want to make a point when we are wrapping. Yeah, and you two want to make a point. You see? So, also you want to say the last word. Oh, you see? She wants to say the last word. How can you say the last word? Yes. Wait. I'll give you half a minute and then half a minute to you for you to make your point. Okay?
No, and I'm really encouraged by what the panel is saying, but the last word from this discussion can't be we are in this situation because of corruption and governance issues. It's a factor, but it's not the only reason. And I see it as a product of colonization and a product of slavery. But I know, but it also took the UK 200 years. It took the UK 200 years to develop, right? So if it took Britain, the 6th largest economy in the world, over 200 years to go through the Industrial Revolution, the fact that Ghana's only been independent for 70 years, I think we also need to cut ourselves some slack.
Thank you. Thank you. Please.
Thanks. No, thank you, Chief. Thank you. I think for me the point that you were making at the end for me is really fundamental. What are we saying to our children, or what will our children say to us? Okay, yeah. So but for me, really, the starting point in this thing, it will be a very difficult journey, a long one, a complicated one. But the starting point, I don't know who's talked about the AU being financed by the EU. Look here, really, the starting point is for us to get our regional institutions to support themselves, at least for the essential things that they are doing, right? And then let's begin implementing the agendas that we have developed. Individually, some heads of state have a lot of money to even pay for the African Union's budget every year, okay? So let's just begin by putting down the resources. Let's get our priorities right. And the priorities is the regional institutions are important for us. What they are doing in our individual countries are important for us. Let's just allocate the resources to education, to health, to the investments in the future. And let's give ourselves the means to be able to speak to our partners we have around the world, at least with a certain level of dignity in terms of, okay, we are sustaining ourselves, we are able to do certain things, and we have the resources to do that. We have the resources, all the resources, including the wealth to do that. Yeah, and recover, because it's about reparations, let's get back the resources that have been stolen. Asset recovery, there's an African common position on that. There's an African common position on asset recovery, let's use it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You see, it's very interesting. It's like us, please, let me wrap up. Let me, please. We can discuss that. We can discuss that over the year, and we are not going to stop. Let us just wrap up what we started, which was very interesting. My sister from Rwanda said we need to take. Here she is, from Burundi, right? Was that the Burundi? Sorry, but Rwanda is just like Burundi; it's the same place. So. We need to take commitment. Nous devons prendre des engagements, n'est-ce pas? And what you just said can be translated into a commitment, because lamentation is not the way out for us. We don't have to lament and say the EU is funding the AU. No, what we need to do is what Nana is saying. If you are Ghana, pay your due. If you are Ghana. If you are Nigeria, pay your due. And then if you are an AU official, stop writing projects for the EU to fund what you are doing. That's what we are talking about. And that's why we said Africa needs to look inward. We need to look at our feet and get the solutions implemented, because it is not about solutions missing. We do have the solutions. The institutions are here. But we need to operationalize these institutions. That's the kind of conclusion that we are getting to. And another thing that was said is that we cannot stop having multilateralism. But what we are saying is that before we go out to negotiate, we need to know what we are and where we are as Africans. Do our things first. And get the muscles, as someone was saying yesterday, the muscles to go out there in the negotiation and punch the people who don't want to do things the way we want it. That's what the world is. You need to be strong before you go out for negotiation. And that's what Africa needs to be doing, and that will be our conclusion. I thank you very much for your contribution.